Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be showing you guys with the electoral map how this race might not be close at all, or as the polls make it seem to be, because if you actually take a look at factual data, on average in every presidential election historically, there's roughly a 3 to 4 point polling error. In terms of the polling error, that's basically a 3.5 shift that the polls, miss. And it's true in 2020. Biden was supposed to win the popular vote by 8 points nationally. He only won it by four, so that's around a 4 point polling error. And then it's consistent. And in 2016, same thing happened. Hillary was supposed to win it by five. She ended up winning it by two. So it's an actual fact. So the fact that the race is basically tied according to the polls. Now, if you apply that to the map, the 3.5 polling error on average, which happens in basically every single presidential election, and CNN even brought this up, then maybe the race is not close at all. That means either two scenarios: that Trump wins in a landslide, or the same thing goes for Kamala Harris. She wins big. She can get up to 319 electoral votes if she's underestimated by the average polling miss or error in every presidential election. And Donald Trump can get well over 312 electoral votes if he's underestimated by the average polling error in every presidential election. But before we get started, make sure you guys are subscribed, click the bell so you don't miss out on my content, press the like button, share this video. Don't forget, if you're interested, we have memberships. You can find the links to that in the description section. So let's start off with the first scenario, and then lastly, the second. So let's start off with, what if Donald Trump was underestimated by the average polling error in every presidential election, which is roughly 3.5, like I just mentioned earlier. We're going to be filling out the swing states, starting off with Nevada. And by the way, Trump is leading the popular vote nationwide according to RCP, which is not looking good for Kamala Harris. He's at 0.3 nationwide, meaning that he would receive more votes overall and most likely win the Electoral College. And keep in mind that because this is not good, 2016, Trump lost the popular vote by 2 points, but still managed to surpass 300 electoral votes. So if he wins it by, 0.3, he might even get more than 312 electoral votes. Yeah, not good news for Kamala Harris. So as of right now, Nevada is 1.5 for Donald Trump. Now, if he's underestimated by the average polling error in every presidential election, he's probably going to win this state by around 4.5 to 4.5 percentage points. That's going to be considered a lean margin. And yet again, later in the video, I will be doing the same thing for Kamala Harris for the second map. And then you have the state of Arizona, in which if he is underestimated by the average polling error in every election by 3.5 percentage points, he's probably going to win the state of Arizona by a little over 5 points, which means it would be arguably a likely margin for the former president. And by the way, Alan Lichtman came out with his election map prediction, and even though he has Georgia and North Carolina blue for Harris, he also has Arizona red for Donald Trump, which goes to show you maybe the state is really a lost cause for Democrats and Kamala Harris. It's really pulling away from her pretty far as of right now. And then you have the deep southern state of Georgia, another must flip for the former president. I think it's one of the more easier flips for him. He's most likely going to flip it because it was the closest swing state out of all of them in the last election. As of right now, Trump's up by 2.6%. Let's say if he were to be underestimated by the average polling error in every single presidential election, he's probably going to win this state by 5 percentage points or so. That's also considered likely, just like Arizona. And then these are real scenarios, by the way. I mean, it's true. Like I mentioned in 2020, Biden was supposed to win the popular vote by 8 points. He only won it by four. Hillary Clinton was supposed to win it by five. She only won it by two. So this is a true fact. Now that's for nationally, not really with the state by state. But in this video, I am taking it state by state for every swing state. But for North Carolina, Trump has a lead of around 1.5 percentage points. So if he is to be underestimated by the average polling error, in every presidential election or so, he's going to win this state ultimately by 4.5 percentage points, which is considered a lean margin, in my opinion. And then you have the state of Virginia, which should be toss-up. I don't know why I have it lean blue as of right now. Kamala Harris is the slight favored in the state of Virginia, which should not be a surprise to anybody, but it is going to be very close in this election, closer than usually or as expected. Right now, she's up by 5.8, almost 6 points. Now, if Trump is underestimated in the state by the average polling error in every election, it's still going to go to Harris, but not by 5.8, probably around 2 percentage points, which is still a lean margin. And then you move towards the northeastern states with the Rust Belt, starting off with Wisconsin. As of right now, it's pretty much a toss up state. It's neck and neck for either candidate. I'd say it's 50-50. 0.3% is the lead for Kamala Harris. Keep in mind, Wisconsin, out of any other states, with the exception for New York, had literally the worst polling error out of any other besides New York in the 2020 election. So considering that there probably will be a massive polling error in the state like it was in 2020, and if Trump were to be underestimated by the average polling error in every election by like 3 to 4 percentage points, 3.5, then that means he's probably going to win Wisconsin by like what? 3.5 percentage points, a lane margin. As of right now, currently have him winning the state by a little over 1 percentage point. And then you have the state of Michigan, which is basically also a toss-up. 0.8% for Kamala Harris, a narrow margin. I personally think this state truly is a toss-up. I won't be shocked if Kamala wins it, and same thing goes for Donald Trump. I won't be surprised if he wins this state. I think it's extremely close. I think Michigan, in my opinion, is actually one of the more closer battleground states that we're going to see in this election. So Donald Trump is going to win this state by over 2.5 percentage points if he were to be underestimated by the average polling error in every single presidential election. Historically, that's going to be lean for Donald Trump in Michigan. And then you have the state of Pennsylvania, which, as of right now, it's more favorable for the former president than Wisconsin or Michigan is looking like. He's up by 0.4%. So he's probably going to win this state by over 3 points if he were to be underestimated by the average polling error in every presidential election. And I mean, it's looking favorable for Donald Trump. So this is what I mean by the election might not even be close as what the polls seem, because keep in mind, when the polls suggested Biden would win in a historic landslide in the 2020 election, it was actually a pretty tight race. And when the polls showed Hillary was going to win massively in 2016, it was a close race. But guess what? Now when this race is close in 2024, it might not actually be close, because you take a look at 2020 and 2016. That literally proves that maybe this election is not close, and either candidate is going to be overestimated by 3.5 percentage points. And the last and final state is going to be New Hampshire, and then we're going to move on to the second scenario, in which what if Kamala was underestimated. So as of right now, she is winning New Hampshire by exactly 4 percentage points. It's basically going to be tilt for her by like what, under percentage point, if Trump were to be underestimated by 3.5%, which is the average polling error. So he's getting 312 electoral votes to Kamala Harris's 226 electoral votes. This is the exact map. If Donald Trump were to be underestimated, based on the average polling error in every single presidential election, this is not a map that is unrealistic. This is very realistic. I think it can very well happen. And now let's flip the scenario in which basically the opposite. What if Kamala Harris, was underestimated by the average polling error in every single presidential election? Maybe Texas would be closer. Same thing goes for the state of Florida. So let's start off with Nevada. Like we just went over earlier, as of right now, Nevada is very close, but Donald Trump is up by 1.5 percentage points. And it is true that this state typically does overestimate Republican support. So therefore, I do think Kamala is going to win this state by 2.5 percentage points, a lean margin, if she were to be underestimated by the average polling error in every single presidential election of 3.5 percentage points. And then you have Arizona, which Donald Trump is favored in this state by 1.5 percentage points, as you can see right here, or actually 2.3, excuse me. So with this polling error of 3 to 4 of every single presidential election, let's say it does go in favor of Kamala Harris. With the opposite scenario, then she's going to end up being the victory in this state by close to 1 percentage point, I would say. Tilt margin, which is not going to be good for Donald Trump at all. And then you have the state of Texas, which as of right now, Donald Trump obviously is going to win this state by a little over 7 points. So he's only going to win it by 3 to 4 if he were to be overestimated by the average polling error of every election. So he's only getting it by a lean margin, which is less than his 2020 margin of victory in the state, which is why I think it's not going to happen, because there's no way Kamala performs better than Joe Biden in 2020, the way he did, in a less favorable environment for Democrats. It just does not make sense. So I do expect Kamala to do worse than Joe Biden. And then we can say right off the bat, Florida is going to be lean because he's up by around 6 percentage points in the state according to the Real Clear Politics polling averages, and basically 530 as well. So let's say he gets it by 3 points this time, which is around his 2020 margin. If he were to be overestimated by the average polling error in every single presidential election. And then you have the state of Georgia, in which, yet again, Donald Trump is winning in this state by 2.6. Kamala would wind up the victory by around 1 percentage point, a tilt margin similar to like Arizona. And both of these states actually voted very closely in the 2020 election, which would actually make sense, even though I don't think this map is going to happen. And then you have the state of North Carolina, in which Harris is going to win it if she were to be underestimated by the average polling error in every single presidential election. But usually the polling error actually favors Republicans because they're mostly underestimated when it comes to the general election, like Donald Trump was twice. But when it comes to the midterms, it is kind of different. In 2022, actually Republicans were surprisingly overestimated. So his lead in North Carolina is 1.5. That means Kamala would probably win it by over 2 points if she were to be underestimated by the average polling error of every single presidential election. And then Virginia would end up being likely for her because she's up by like around 5 points right now. Then she'd probably win it by close to 9 points in that scenario. And then you have the state of Wisconsin, very important state for both candidates. She's winning it by 0.3%. It's practically tied as if right now. Then she would probably wind up winning this state by over 3 percentage points, which is going to be considered a lean margin with that polling error of on the average of every presidential election. And then you have the state of Michigan, in which she's up by 0.8%, looking slightly better for her. Not should be shocking to anyone because Michigan was actually the bluest Rust Belt state of the three in 2020, voted to the left of both Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. She would probably win this state by close to 4 percentage points, making it yet again, once again, the bluest Rust Belt state of the three in this election, as well, just like it was in 2016, the Obama era as well in 2020. A lean margin for her. And then you have Pennsylvania. Let's say she's underestimated by the average polling error in every presidential election. Donald Trump's up by 0.4. She'd probably win it by around 3 to 4 percentage points, like 3.5. Also a lean margin for her. New Hampshire, she's up by 4 right now. She would probably win it by 7 or 8%. That's a likely margin. So just like I mentioned earlier, she gets 319 electoral votes to Donald Trump's 219 with the average polling error of every election, which is 3.5 or 3 to 4 points. Even CNN admitted this. You have the other scenario, which we did first, in which what if Donald Trump was underestimated by the average polling error? And this demonstrates, the message I'm trying to put out, is the point of the video is that this election might not be actually close as what you may think. Either candidate could win in a landslide. I'm not saying Donald Trump, has the only chance of winning big. Maybe Kamala can too, but in my opinion, it's more likely or so that Trump wins bigger, than Kamala Harris. I think if Kamala wins, it's going to be by a very small amount. But I think there's a higher chance if Trump wins, it's going to be by a greater amount. So I think 312 for Trump is not looking too unrealistic, in my opinion. That is my exact prediction for my final prediction. So this is the exact map if Kamala is underestimated by the exact polling error of every single presidential election. One last final reminder is to subscribe, click the bell so you don't miss all my content, press the like button, share this video. Don't forget, we have memberships. If you are interested, you can find a link to that in the description section. That's pretty much it. Thank you everyone for watching.